This video will cover creating scatter plots and coming up with regression equations on the TI-89. So to start, we want to go into our stats list editor, which is where we begin with pretty much most of our stats problem in this course. So stats list editor, I just hit escape on this guy. Now I'm looking at the paper in your packet called the Unit 2 Calculator Instructions, right? And you'll see a table there that has a bunch of data. It has the chest sizes and weights for randomly selected bears. So I have all the chest sizes created into list 1 here, and then all the weights in list 2. And first thing we want to do is take a look at this scatter plot, see what it looks like. So I'm going to hit F2 for plots, all right, and then hit enter on plot setup. So this is where we went to make our histograms, dot plots, not dot plots, box plots, etc. All right, if we see anything here, let's go ahead and clear it out. So if you hit F3, that'll clear out. And now I'm going to hit F1 to define this plot. Okay. All right, so when we look at this, we see scatter plot up top. That's what we want. All right, and the only thing that we need to put in here is our two lists. So our data is in list 1 and list 2. So I'm going to hit the second key and then the minus sign to get into our variable link. All right, and then I'm going to select list 1 here. Okay, that's our X values. Those were the chest sizes. And then I'm going to go down to the Y, and I'm going to put in list 2 the same way. So second minus key to get to this variable link, list 2. Okay, hit enter. All right, and we see it created that plot there. All right, now to actually view this, we need to graph it. Graph is above F3 in yellow, so I'm going to hit that diamond key, and then F3. Okay, and usually you don't see anything. That's because we need to zoom in to the data. So F2 is zoom, and then we go down to option 9, or we could just hit that 9 button. All right, and that zooms to the data, and here we see our scatter plot. All right, and we can answer the question on the worksheet asking us to describe the association with FUDs, form, unusual features, directions, strength. All right, the other thing we want to be able to do is create the regression equation. So the regression equation is the line of best fit that would go through these points collectively. All right, so let's go back to our stats editor. So I hit that apps button. All right, and we're going into the menu where we did one variable stats, okay, which is the calc menu, F4. Okay, so we can see one variable stats on the top there, but that's not what we're picking this time. Instead, we're going to go down to number 3, regressions, all right, which has its own menu, and we want the top one, linear regression A plus BX. It's going to ask us where our data is. If yours doesn't already say list 1 and list 2, you're going to access those the same way we did before. Second key, so let's clear this one out. Second key, minus sign, right, brings up this variable list 1. Okay, I'm just going to hit enter a couple times. That screen will disappear, a new one will pop up. All right, and we can see when we look at this. It's a little blurry. Hopefully it's not as blurry as it looks. There we go. All right. So at the top here we see y equals a plus bx. All right. Underneath it we have an a and a b. So a is that standalone number. That's the y-intercept in this case. B is next to the x, which makes it the slope. Okay, so the slope would be 12.38. This is pretty much y equals mx plus b of an equation. They just changed some of the variables. So instead of m for slope, we're using b. And instead of b for y-intercept, we're using a. And we're also switching the order. We're putting the y-intercept before that slope and x combination. All right, at the bottom here, we have two values. Okay, let's start from the bottom. That r is the correlation coefficient. It's telling us how well these points fit a line, how close they are to the line. The closer they are to the line, the closer it is to 1 for a positive slope, -1 for a negative slope. And r squared is just that number squared, and that's called the coefficient of determination. Okay, one other thing we can do is if we actually, let's run that same thing again. Now also note it popped up another item in our list here called residuals, R-E-S-I-D, resid. All right, we're going to talk about those in another video. But let's go back into our plot setup. Okay, I'm just going to hit F1 to redefine this. And if I scroll down to, no, I'm sorry, this is not what we want to do. We want to go back into the regression, F4 calc. Okay, so we're going to run the regression again. So F4 calc down to regressions. This top one, a plus bx. All right, and if we go down to store regression equation, it says store reg EQN. Okay, we can take the regression equation and just have it put it in one of our y equals things. So let's just pick y1. Okay, and when we run it, it's going to pop up that same window it did before with that same information. But now if we go into y equals, we'll see it took that information and it put it in here as an equation of a line. So now if we go back to our graph, right, we can see that it graphs that line of best fit through the points. Just another note, we can also trace through these points. So if we hit F3 for the trace button, that brings up a little cursor, and we can kind of scroll through, and it tells us at the bottom, so it's pointing at this point up here. It says that the x coordinate is 54, the y coordinate is 416, and we can do that to get to any point along the way here.